Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to our Kinetic Platform Orientation Series. I'm James Davies, and in this video we'll be covering what attributes are and how they can be used as a powerful tool to extend the Kinetic Platform. Quick reminder, if you haven't watched any of the earlier videos in this series, I'd recommend jumping back to those where we cover topics like how to get your local environment stood up and the overall structure of the platform. With that, I'm going to jump in, and today again we're covering attributes. So at a high level, you can think of attributes as a way to extend the core functionality of the Kinetic platform. I'm going to navigate here to the space level, so the space context. This is kind of like the global context. And then walk through a quick example of how an attribute can be used and applied to an object in the platform. Let's start with users. If I click on users here, and I go to create a new user, built into our platform, we have some first-class properties about a user, like what's their username and what's their email and display name, etc. But what if we need to store some additional metadata about the user, like what's their phone number, for instance? We don't have anything kind of built into the platform that stores their phone number. And so we use metadata inside of our platform to extend different objects without actually modifying themselves. And attributes are the way to do that. So if we wanted to, for instance, store a user's phone number on their record, I would go to, I could scroll down here to definitions and click attributes, and then user, and then create new definition, and I'll call this phone number. You can also provide a description so that other developers understand how this attribute's used, and then create the attribute. And now when I navigate back to my user record, I'll open up mine. I can say this user's phone number is that. And so attributes are effectively just a key value pair. And so inside of these attributes, you can store anything from text to JSON, and it's kind of up to whatever is leveraging these attributes, like your front end or security policies or your workflows, to parse that data out or know what to expect and then use it appropriately. And so how this becomes really powerful is, let's say in our front end, we're going to build a screen where the user can edit their information. If we want to store that information, we need a place to do that, and it makes sense to store it on the user's record. So we can create a series of attributes. They're almost like extra fields that the user then could potentially update. And so I'm going to walk through another example of that in a second, but first, I want to go through what actually you can apply attributes to, and it's pretty much every object in the system. So we can add attributes to the space itself. A common example of that might be the name of the space or the company's name that I might want to render somewhere inside of my portal or leverage in a workflow when sending an email out. So again, think of these attributes as constants that can be used elsewhere within the platform. The user itself, we just covered that, so we can create user attributes. And user attributes are only updatable by users that have the access to update a user. So there's a security rule in place that says if you have access to update a user, you're able to update an attribute. The contrast to that, or the other example, is user profile attributes. User profile attributes are always updatable by the end user. And so, for instance, maybe you want the user to be able to provide an update to if they're working from home or working remotely. You can create an attribute called, work preference and allow them to set that and change that. But they wouldn't be able to maybe set who their manager is, because that might be used in workflow, and that you don't want them to set it to their best friend and have them approve their raise, for instance. So user profile attributes, those are updatable by the end user. User attributes are only updatable by people that have permissions to update users or create users. And then finally, team attributes. These are tied to a team. They kind of hang off a team or can extend a team. And so some team attributes that are common might be who's the manager of this team, or what's a description of this team. And so you can create attributes that can then, again, be leveraged in security, in workflow, or in your front end. If I now navigate into the cap, or here's our example training cap, and click on attributes. So the cap itself, very similar to the space, it can have its own set of attributes. Categories within the platform can have attributes. And then forms themselves can have attributes. An example form attribute might be, does this form require an approval or not? And then if it's set to true, then an approval workflow might happen. Otherwise, it might not. So what I want to do today is show how this connects to the front end code that we're building. And so I'm going to run over here to our out of the box Hello World React portal. This is the one that we introduced in the last orientation video. And I can see here I'm on this caps list screen. And it's showing me, it's effectively, if I had 10 caps, it would show me a card for each of the caps here. And one of my requirements is I need to actually show an icon on each of these caps. And I don't want to have to change my front end code every single time someone wants to change what the icon is of the cap. So what we're going to do is in our front end code, effectively fetch the cap and include its attributes. And when I have those attributes back, I can then insert a Line Awesome icon class to actually represent the icon for that cap. And so to do that, I'm going to go into my attribute setup here. We call them attribute definitions. I'm inside of the training cap, and we're going to create a new cap attribute called icon. Excellent. And now in the settings for this cap, I now have to apply a value to that icon. And so I've done this already. In this case, I'm using Line Awesome Automobile. And so I just got that off the Line Awesome website. The class that I need to provide is LA and then LA-automobile. And so again, my front end code is going to fetch this cap. And then it's going to say, do you have an icon set as one of your attributes? And if so, use that as the class name when I'm drawing up where that icon should show on my screen. And so let me just show some of the front end code for that. I'm in this component, that's the caps list. And in this component, you can see I've fetched the different caps from the caps API. And now I'm iterating over them and creating cards for them. And one of the properties that we're passing into the card is an icon, or one of the props that we pass in is the icon. And you can see in here, it's testing to see if an icon attribute exists. And if so, select the first one. Attributes can have multiple values, so they're represented as an array. And so we want to select the first one in this case because we're only providing one value or one icon. There's other attributes that you may want to have multiple values for a single attribute. And then so if I go into this kinetic card quickly and open up that component, you can see an icon is passed in as a prop, and then it's used here in the class name. And so if an icon exists, then print out LAS and then which is Line Awesome, and then the Line Awesome class. And so I've got this kind of already wired up, so I'm going to shift back to my browser. Let's go to localhost, and as you can see, I've added automobile in as the cap attribute, and the little icon for a car shows up on my caps list. So again, very powerful feature of the platform. Again, without actually modifying the Kinetic platform itself, we're able to extend it, which makes it very resilient to upgrades of the Kinetic platform. And then we can use these attributes in security policies to determine who should have access to what inside of workflows, and then obviously inside of the portal. Again, keep in mind that attributes are key value pairs, and the value can actually be a string again, or a JSON that gets parsed out. So for instance, one use case might be on your landing page of your dashboard, you may want users to be able to rearrange different widgets, and then need to be able to store what their preferences are for that. So we can have a user homepage preference attribute that we're setting as a JSON map that represents what widgets they have on their dashboard. And then you'd wire that into your React code to paint up the screen according to that attribute's configuration. One other quick thing to point out, I just want to show in the API how this works. So I'm hitting the caps endpoint. So I'm saying I want to fetch the cap called training, and then I'm including what's a variable called attributes map And when I actually run that, it's going to show me the icon attribute that we created, as well as what we set it to. And as you can see here, this is an array. So that's why inside of the React code, we grabbed the first one. If this attribute allowed multiple values, then this array could be longer. So hopefully that helps everyone understand what attributes are and how powerful they are and how they can be used in the platform. Feel free to check out our documentation site, which goes into much more depth as to how attributes can be applied and the different ones that exist, and then also some different use cases. Thanks so much for your time.